Good morning. Welcome to the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live. It's Wednesday, the 27th of April. I'm Haggerty 10, or Twitter handle, as you can see, Tony Haggerty, and I'm joined by Alison McConnell today at AliBally76, as you can see, the Twitter handle. How are you, Alison? You all right?
Very well, thanks, Tony. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm good. Now, we always do the housekeeping in the morning. First thing, subscribe to the Celtic Way. It costs you £1 a month for 2 months. And you can win a £100 gift card as well in the process. All you have to do is hit the subscribe button, log on to www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe, and you'll see all sorts of wonderful articles on there, videos like this, stats, analysis, you name it, and lots of contributors, myself and Alison among them. Now, Alison, the Scottish Football Writers Association announced their 5-man shortlist for the Manager of the Year. 3 Scottish Premiership managers, a Championship manager, and the International manager. Now, Ange Postecoglou, Malky Mackay, and Robbie Neilson from the Scottish Premiership, Dick Campbell from the Championship, and the International manager, Steve Clarke, are all on the shortlist. Now, a lot of people speculating as to who might get it and why, but you've got to think that Ange's in with a great shout of landing a highly prestigious honour in his first season in Scottish football.
Yeah, I think so. I think you could make an argument on the merits of all 5 candidates. I think they're all there because they've compounded expectations, I think, this season. I think they've all enjoyed success in different margins and how you measure that. I think few would have anticipated Ange Postecoglou overseeing such a swift turnaround. I think if you look at the chaotic nature of what he inherited, I think there was such a disparity all over the club. I think it felt very disjointed, not just on the pitch, but off it too. I think there was a fracture too between the owners and runners of Celtic, and those who preside over the decision making, and those who pay money to go and watch games. And I think it felt almost like civil war at times at the end of last season and at the beginning of going into this season. But I think very much what happens is if you have a winning team, I think you dispel all of those things. I think you mute other criticisms of the club if there's a winning team on the park. And I think there's been a unity around Celtic, which has largely come from the job that Ange Postecoglou has done. And I think the run at the minute of 28 league games without defeat is laudable in itself. I think it's a remarkable run of consistency. And I think it points to just how consistent Celtic have been since he found his feet, since he got through that first transfer window, got over the rocky elements of the opening months of the campaign. And I think you see the philosophy that he spoke about come to fruition. I still think Celtic are a work in progress. I think there's still much to be done on that front, but I think you would have to applaud the job he's done. And I think if you go and you win the title and you win a League Cup, you get to the semi-final of the other domestic cup, I think you have to be in with a shout of claiming the honour.
Well, the comments are coming in thick and fast about this one, Alison. Jill Paul says it's got to be Postecoglou given the turnaround at Celtic. You alluded to that. Ange must be surely all day. John Curry comes in. Ange's a stick-on to get manager of the year, even those across the road admire him for the job he's done. What Ange has done for Celtic in his first season, so remarkable. William Lamont came in. Ange must win it considering he never brought his own backroom team. David Bradley comes in, says odds on not having anyone else. There you go. So, and here's one. Ange won't get it. The retro Celtic. Ange won't get it simply because he's Celtic manager. Being Scottish football, you'll probably find it. The Division 2 winning boss will be ahead of him. Well, it's all. Well, let's take the separate achievements of others stacked up against Ange, Alison. First of all, Robbie Neilson guided Hearts to third and the Scottish Cup final in their first season back in the top flight. That's a great achievement for Hearts, isn't it?
I think he's had an excellent season. I think when you look at where Hearts were this time a year ago and how they won the championship, I think there were lots of Hearts fans that wanted Robbie Neilson out, that thought he shouldn't get a crack at the top flight of the Premier League. I think they've had a very, very good season. I think if they're to go on and win the Scottish Cup, all of a sudden you're framed in a very particular context amongst the Hearts support. I think he's there on merit. I think the job he's done deserves some kind of recognition. I think my own vote would go for Ange Postecoglou, but I think Robbie Neilson would be a worthy contender.
Yeah, I think so too. I think he's done a remarkable job, because there was a lot of ill will towards him from the Hearts supporters when he left the first time, and he's come back and he's done a remarkable job as well. And Hearts have established themselves as the third force in the country by a long way, in a league where you see the likes of Aberdeen and Hibs in the bottom six. So it's a remarkable achievement what he did with Hearts, considering they've come up from the Championship. And I think as well an honourable mention to him for the season they've had. And if he wins the Scottish Cup, it would put the Tinlid in a fantastic campaign. Now, the other one in the Scottish Premiership that's been nominated, Alison, is Malky Mackay. 10 games, the first 10 games of the season, easy for me to say, without a win, and barnstorms the top six. Unbelievable achievement. In any other season, you might be talking about Malky as the manager of the year for that alone.
Yeah, I think it's quite a turnaround from the turn of the year, from the post-Christmas split, from the winter break going in. I think, again, fairly remarkable. I think it's been an excellent campaign. I think at one point you just would never have envisaged them being near the top six. I think in those opening months of the season, I think they were probably my favourite to be relegated. I thought they looked in danger, just have been cast adrift at a couple of points in the season. So to have found their feet, to have found a level of consistency, and to be where they are with the budget they have, the resources that they have, I think it does speak volumes for his capabilities of a manager. I think you all know, that the reason why he's at Ross County is because of the stuff that happened off the pitch and happened when he was with Cardiff. But I think you can't doubt his qualities as a coach and as a manager, and I think that's been reflected in the campaign that Ross County have had.
Yeah, I think one thing is clear. You say there's a lot of perception out there about Malky Mackay, but one thing is he's a very good football manager, isn't he, Alison?
Yeah, I think so. And, I think it'll be an interesting summer for him, because I think, for me, he would probably be one of the favourites for the Hibs job. When you listen to what Ron Gordon had to say in his interview, I'm not sure you would agree with much of it, but I think what came through clearly was the hunt for an experienced manager. You just wonder if the baggage that's there maybe just prohibits a move elsewhere. But I think the job he's done at Ross County, if you were discussing it on football merits, then I think he might be in line for a move elsewhere this summer.
Pretty astonishing. And speaking of astonishing, Dick Campbell of Grove took it to the wire with Kilmarnock, lost out last week, but they're in the playoffs. I mean, that's an incredible story, isn't it? Success story, and it would be kind of some sort of poetic justice if they did manage to get themselves through the playoffs. But what a season for Arbroath.
I think they had the full support of the country last Friday night. I think people watching that game at Rugby Park were willing them to do it. I think he's one of the characters of Scottish football, isn't he? I think, and I think their season, I think everyone expected the season to dip and to tail off. Yeah. Going into February, March, I think they kept a level of consistency, and I think they would still be one of the favourites. I think people would still maybe fancy them for a playoff route to promotion. I think that can be quite fraught. I think it's not an easy way to get up, but I think they'd be a very difficult team to beat.
Yeah, and I mean, even if Dick Campbell doesn't win it, he has to have an honourable mention in there in terms of the award ceremony, because it's been a terrific season for them and something that should be applauded and respected. Now, the other candidate, Steve Clarke, Alison, national team manager. Scotland are 2 games playoff away from the qualifying for the first World Cup finals since 1998. You having that, Steve Clarke, on the short list? Do you think he's done a good job as a national manager?
Yeah, I think he has. I think, again, you would point to the consistency of Scotland. I think you can see that there's changes have been made. You can see there. I think there's a different atmosphere around the squad. I think within touching distance of a World Cup, you would still think it's quite an onerous task to qualify, given the games that potentially lie in wait. But I think he's definitely worth a mention. I think the job he's done with Scotland, I think it's a very, very difficult job to take on. But I think I think it's beyond criticism at the minute. I think results and performances over the course of the last 12, 15 months have been without reproach.
I think that when you weigh up against them all, Ange still shades it for me for what he inherited on his own and in his first season. And as you say, he stands on the brink of a League Cup and League Premiership double in his first season, and just the way he's turned the club around and just everything that's come with that, and the fact that Celtic's attempt for 10 in a row was such a disaster, and the unity that he brought and the style and the philosophy that he has brought to Celtic. I just think, in my opinion, that just trumps the other candidates. Would you say to that, Alison? Do you agree with that, or do you think there's another candidate?
Yeah, as I said, I voted for Ange Postecoglou for those kind of reasons. I think what you do have to consider for Celtic managers and Rangers managers too is the daily pressures of the job. I think the demands of the job and the intensity is different from anywhere else in the country. I think there's a fairly suffocating spotlight at times in which you've got to try and regroup and recover. And I think just those first 6 to 8 weeks in the job, beginning from how he got the job in the first place, the circumstances around it, coming in is very obviously a second choice, and negotiating that and coming in and explaining who he was, almost what he was about. I think I was working the day that he was unveiled as Celtic manager, and it was incredibly low key. When you look at other managerial arrivals, you think of the 13,000 people that waited on Brendan Rodgers, like the club had to open the stadium to let people go in. Martin O'Neill, big crowds on the steps and waiting on him coming out to speak, and it felt very low key. And I'd qualify that obviously by saying we were still in COVID times and people were requested really not to congregate still, but it just felt very low key as an arrival. And that Dave felt very low key, but he spoke very eloquently. That day he was very articulate, and immediately there was a sense of being in on the same page as a club with his background and how well he spoke about all that. I thought he came across.
Yeah.
I thought he made a very immediate, positive first impression, and I don't think you can discount how important that is. Again, what I will say is that counts for very little if you're not seeing improvement, success, progress on the park. But I think you did see that. I think there were question marks immediately. I think you think of that defeat in the opening night at Tynecastle, the exit from the Champions League. I think to have come through that, and then I think what you would applaud more than anything is just really the level of consistency. Since then, I think since October, Celtic have dropped 6 league points.
Yeah,
I think it points to an incredible, consistent run of form, and I think you would have to recognise that.
I couldn't agree more, Alison. I very articulately put. Yeah, definitely. I just shades it for me, as I said. Now, it is the kind of award season, and Stephen Welsh missed out on the Young Player of the Year award to Calvin Ramsey. He was on the 5-man shortlist for that as well. But Sean did a piece today saying that did he deserve it? Did he have a case? It's quite a compelling case, actually, that Sean puts forward on the website. I'd say if you want to have a look, you can look on the website and you can read it. Did you think that Stephen Welsh deserved it, or is Calvin Ramsey a worthy winner for you, Alison, the Young Player of the Year?
I'd have to say Calvin Ramsey's a very worthy winner for me. I think appreciate where you're coming from. I think Stephen Welsh will be fairly pleased with his season, with the contribution that he's made over the course of the campaign. But I think Calvin Ramsey, for me, I think he's a player that I've seen maybe 6 or 7 times this season in games, and in what has been a disastrous campaign for Aberdeen with so little of note there that's been positive. I think he's stood out. I think there's something of Kieran Tierney in him, and the kind of qualities that he has, and the aggression that he shows in his game. I think he's a very skillful fullback, and that's not to play down the role that Stephen Welsh has had. I'm sure he'll be delighted, and he'll look to be building on the campaign he's had next season. But I think for me, Calvin Ramsey has been quite exceptional at times, and a very, very difficult season for Aberdeen.
I have to say, I agree with that. Every time I've watched Calvin Ramsey, he's been a standout, and I enjoy watching him. I think he's a very talented young player, and I think he deserves to get it. But I think, as you say, Stephen Welsh will be delighted that he was nominated, considering the fact he hasn't played as much football as he would maybe have liked this season, but he's still highly rated by Ange Postecoglou, isn't he?
I think it's been difficult for him when you consider just how consistent Carl Starfelt and Cameron Carter-Vickers have been. They've been solid. They've worked to create the best defensive record in the league. I think it's very clear that they are the first choice defensive pairing at the minute. So I think it makes it difficult for Stephen Welsh to work his way in. But what you would say is that when he has been asked and when he has been required, he has shown a competency. He's shown that he's capable of it. And I think the next questions for him is how he builds on it, how he improves on it, and how he gets more game time.
Now, as I say, it's awards time, and everybody putting in their nominations and nominees, and letting everybody know. The PFA Scotland Team of the Year was out yesterday, Alison, as well, and 6 Celtic players. Celtic dominated that. 6 Celtic players. Now, I've written a piece on the website as well, saying that there probably should have been more in the 2 ones that I thought were hard done by Joe Hart and Carl Starfelt. But the Celtic players that got in were Jota, Kyogo Furuhashi, Tom Rogic, Callum McGregor, Josip Juranovic, and Cameron Carter-Vickers. Do you agree with all 6 of them, and do you think that Joe Hart and Carl Starfelt also had a case?
I think largely I would agree with the selection. I think Joe Hart's probably would maybe have been second to Craig Gordon. I think Craig Gordon's had a fantastic season. Craig Gordon was my vote for Player of the Year. I think he was exceptional at times, and I think if you judge it on players who contribute in terms of points with the difference that they make, given their contribution in a game, I think Craig Gordon's probably been worth 12 to 15 points for Hearts. And I would take also the argument that I think Joe Hart has really helped to solidify Celtic's backline. I think he's played a key role in Celtic's season this term. I think it was a position that was hugely problematic last term, and I think it undermined any sense of composure in the back line. I think it felt fraught for large chunks of the last 15 months or so, and I think Joe Hart has settled it. I think also his leadership qualities have been very notable at Celtic. I think he's almost a second captain, if you like, just with how he conducts himself in and around the pitch. And I think he might consider himself a bit hard done by not to be in there, but I think Craig Gordon had an exceptional campaign.
Yeah, I mean, I did say in the piece, if you want to go onto the website, that he should consider himself hard done by, but it might be churlish to deny Craig Gordon, considering the season that Hearts have had. And my other kind of person that I thought might feel or be smarting from it would be Carl Starfelt, because he's part of the meanest defence in the league. But there is this perception that he's the weaker of the 2 that are rock solid in that defence. That's just my own thoughts, and that was kind of thrust of the piece. I thought there could have been arguably 8 Celtic players in the 11.
Yeah, I think Carl Starfelt got better as the season went on. I think he found it difficult initially to come in and to settle in. There's a few games where I think he looked uncomfortable too. I'm thinking maybe the League Cup final at Hampden. But I think he'll be pleased with how his season has panned out. To be honest, I think individual awards are probably very secondary at this stage of the season when you're going for a league title. Or I think it's maybe a nice compliment to find yourself in there. But I think ultimately they'll be more satisfied with just pushing for a league winners' medal.
Indeed. Well, the big prize is still to be handed out, Alison, the Scottish Premiership trophy. Celtic could take another huge step towards that on Sunday by beating Rangers. The countdown continues. We'll ramp that up in the coming days. As you say, I think it's the team award that all the Celtic players and the manager want, the Premiership trophy. Individual awards are honours, and individual awards are prestigious, but as you say, they're concentrating on the big one. Thanks for your contribution today, really enjoyed that. The debate will continue about how many players and who should get what awards. It always does, but it always sparks a good debate, doesn't it, Alison? That's the whole point of it.
Indeed.
Have a good day. All right, and I'll speak to you soon. And thanks for the comments, guys. We shall reconvene tomorrow and Friday ahead of the big one.